Welcome back to part 5 of our live training session here with our K24 Swapped Civic SI. This training module, we're going to take a look at doing our full throttle calibration process on our low cam or non-VTEC of operation. We're going to learn how to sort through our fuel, spark timing, variable cam control, and also setting up our knock control so we have a long-term safety protection in place, also in helping us guide through the spark tuning process, knowing what amount of timing is going to be safe and what is going to be dangerous, could potentially lead to knocks. We have a lot of things to unpack and cover here. Let's jump in so we can check this out. Welcome back to our live training session here with our K24 Swapped Civic SI. In this training module, we're going to now jump into doing full throttle tuning on our low cam or non-VTEC of operation. We're going to be sorting out our fuel, our spark, our variable cam control, as well as our knock control here on our low cam. We have a lot of things to discuss. Let's jump in and let's take a look at a few details that we need to know before we actually start our full throttle calibration process. Now we're going to be using a mainline chassis dyno for this demonstration, and I'm going to be working with the mainline screen here. We're going to go in and set up the dyno, so it's going to be into its dyno mode. So we'll go through some of that here in a little bit, and then we're going to go just rapid fire through all of the calibration setup and steps in order to get this dialed in. So you'll see the process from start to finish. Let's jump in here and take a look, again, talk about some things we need to know before we head into doing our full throttle tuning. Now, going in here to our fuel page. Into the fuel page, we have our main V table. Well, we've dialed in our main V table here from approximately 80 kPa and below, so we know that this has been solidly dialed in. Now we're going to be working on our higher than 80 kPa range, so in this case, 88 kPa and above. We need to dial these values in. Now it's going to be the same process as we looked at in our part throttle cruise tuning, where we specify the target lambda. In this case, above 80 kPa here, we're going to be specifying it at 86 lambda. Now it's a little bit rich. 88 lambda would be acceptable. Sometimes even 90 lambda would be acceptable here for a naturally aspirated engine, but we're going to keep it safe, keep it conservative, so I'm going to be targeting 86 lambda. We specified the target lambda. Our job is to calibrate our volumetric efficiency values here at full throttle to match, in terms of our actual air fuel, to match the target. So we have a wideband, EMU wideband that's wired into our EMU Black here, and we're constantly streaming that input in. It's looking at that. We have it pointed to it, we have it calibrated, and the EGO correction is going to be taking a look at what the wideband is going to read, compare it to the desired target. It'll figure out the error, the difference, and then it's going to be making a percentage of adjustment to the injector pulse width that's coming from our fuel and airflow model, essentially highlighting how far off our volumetric efficiency table is. So it might be 5%, it might be 10%, it might be 20% off. We'll be using the EGO correction to give us a guiding point to making our adjustments in our V table. So we'll look at that here. Now, we have a couple additional things to factor in. We have our spark tuning. And our spark tuning, we have above 80 kPa here. We've locked our values in at 15 degrees. We've done this specifically so that we have conservative spark timing, so we don't need to worry about knock or pre-ignition occurring in full throttle. But we also can utilize this, because we have no knock or pre-ignition occurring, we can utilize this to dial in our knock noise floor table. So if we bump over here into our knock page, we have our engine noise table here. This is going to be acting as the floor. Anything above the noise that we set here will be considered actual knock, anything below that, just noise. So this needs to be calibrated per the engine we're working with. We have to go and set all these configuration details up. So we're going to go and take a look at how this is going to perform. But we're going to do this later in the tutorial. We're starting off with conservative values. These values, again, allow us to go through the airflow calibration process, getting that V table dialed in, getting our fueling right. Then we can turn our attention into spark tuning. Now, before we even look at spark tuning, that's going to be the last thing we actually work with in our order of operations here for our full throttle tuning. We're going to dive into our variable cam tuning. Now, if we jump over here into our cam page has been configured so that we have our part throttle, cruise area, variable cam dialed in. We've worked with that in that last tutorial. Essentially below 80 kPa, we've dialed our values in. Now we're going to be looking at how to calibrate and dial in our values here at full throttle. We'll find it should see the similar trend as to what we're finding here in terms of 30 degrees in the mid-range, maybe even 40 degrees, depending on how the engine responds. Then we taper back as the engine RPM picks up. As we get up to higher RPM, we'll see that the variable cam should taper back and go closer to zero or go back to zero. We'll have to see how this goes. Every engine's a little bit different. Depending on the breathing mods, this has a restrictive exhaust, so we'll probably find that it's going to need less overlap going back closer to zero as the RPM increases. We'll have to see how this goes. Again, kind of keeping an open mind with calibrating and tuning. So we know that we need to dial in our 80 kPa and above for spark timing, for our VE airflow fueling model, and then we also have to dial in our variable cam. Now the best order of operations here to work with this is to start off doing a baseline pull with 0 degrees in our variable cam target table. This allows us to kind of get an idea as to what the engine's making with this minimal overlap. Then, and we'll note what the lambda showing, we'll note what the EGO's correction showing. Then we'll simply make an update change. We'll go from 0 to 10 in our variable cam target table, then from 10 to 20, then from 20 to 30, and then we might even get up to 40 depending on how the engine responds. We'll see the effect by moving our variable cam up. We can actually measure the result here on the chassis dyno and seeing the before and after by making the variable cam change to get an actual confirmation. If you don't have a chassis dyno, you can actually look at your fueling as you change your variable cam. If you're fueling to your engine, if it leans out as you're making your variable cam change only, that means that the change you've just made is a positive change. You're gaining torque, you're moving more airflow into the engine with that overlap. If you're finding that it gets richer, that means the change you've just made in your variable cam timing is actually causing you a power loss, and you don't want to run that variable cam mapping. So we'll work through this as we go through. We're going to figure out how to set a blend up here for the variable cam at full throttle. Then we can touch our VE table up, get that airflow model 100% nailed down. Then we can go into our spark tuning and work with the spark tuning and our knock control, get that sorted out. So it's always the last thing in the order of operations here for our full throttle tuning. Now we're just strictly going about dialing in our low cam. We're not touching our high cam. That'll be the next tutorial, but this process is going to be the same for the high cam as we're going to find. Now, let's take a look at something real quick that I want to note and I want to point out that you don't mess up. I actually have in the base map creation process, there was a specific value that we didn't program properly. That's for our VTEC engagement. Let me talk about that real quick. So if we move over here into our last 3 windows, I have one labeled VTEC, cam, so cam control switching VTEC, spark tuning VTEC. We'll talk about what these actually mean here, but if we just jump into this window with VTEC. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.